Yeah, sure. Okay. Sure. Yeah, that's fine. You can use that. You'll see pretty quickly that for my approach to direct painting, the tone of the canvas isn't that important, really. So yeah, that sounds like you'll be fine with that. Just gotta get some brushes. So kind of before I start each painting session, depending on what I'm doing, I'll pick out, 6 or 7 brushes that I'll use for that session. So because we're doing direct and we're just starting out, I'm getting some pretty big brushes here. This there, that's where it's going to live. The brushes are going to live here. Got a fresh paper towel in my hand, and I just need to get a little bit of Gamsol to get started. So I use Gamsol just in the beginning of this. One thing, I have to move this just a little bit. Eesh. It's not super helpful, is it? Yeah, I use Gamsol just in the beginning to get my drawing in, but you can use medium for that too. It's just not as quick, but that's fine. So you guys the only thing I can't really do here is pull up the reference image for you all to see. It's on one of my screens, but it's not on yours. So does everyone have that up kind of on their own screen, or do we need to problem solve that? Got it, everyone? Okay. Sure. Yeah, you know what? Maybe I could. Okay. Something we could do is actually, if everyone turns off their videos, so if there's anyone that can't just pull it up on a separate screen, let me know, but I have an idea that should work if that's the case, but it's kind of a pain in the butt. So if you have a second screen, let's go that route, but please speak up if that's not going to work for you, and I have another idea. They did indirect for the most part. Yeah, you can think of direct painting as, so rather indirect painting is direct painting plus kind of the drawing, the underpainting stuff, and plus like glazed layers and corrections on top of it. So it's what they did, incorporated direct painting, but it has beginning steps and end steps basically. So yeah, this won't look too unusual to you guys, I don't think. Okay, so I didn't hear anyone say anything, so hopefully everyone has the reference up on their own screen somewhere they can refer to, or they can just go with just watching the painting happen. So I'm dipping my brush in a little bit of Gamsol. I'm going to get a little bit of black, very little amount, and I'm going to start blocking this in. So what I'm looking for initially, and if you guys were with in the primer class for the drawing section last term, then some of this will kind of make sense to you. But I'm blocking out the big picture information, and I'm taking angles, so I'm using my brush. I can't really, I'm not going to get too into it, but I'm using my brush to kind of line up with the image, in this case the reference of the cast, and I'm kind of taking that angle from here over to the drawing, checking it that way. So that's kind of how I'm checking my accuracy with some of my initial mark making. So once I have kind of this bounding box, the things I'm checking is basically this point, this little corner across to this corner across to that corner, and that's going to tell me roughly that my proportions are pretty close. Don't overthink this step too much, it's just very early stuff. The whole direct painting process is a very liquid process, so there's, you can correct things as you go. You end up, sometimes you'll make mistakes, you'll blow things out of proportion in the process. Everything can be fixed, so it's really just about getting in the ballpark right now. So I have this kind of bounding box, and I'm going to think about, straight away I'm going to go into some basic shadow shape information here. A little more Gamsol, and I'm only going to use the Gamsol for this kind of drawing map block in. Too much paint on there. Come back, get some more Gamsol. And you can see, sorry, I don't know if you guys can hear that. You can see how transparent this is, how washy it is. You can even see some of this. So the consistency, the Gamsol isn't dripping all the way off, but it is running. You can see it's starting to drip, but it's very slow. So it's gathering, pooling up at the bottom and then running, but it's not overly kind of wet, I guess. Thinking about the corner of the eye a little bit. That's going to be in there somewhere. Okay. Still just thinking about the shadow shapes with a lot of these casts, the features, the eyes especially, it's kind of taunting you. It wants you to get in there and just get all those details out, but it's not going to do you any good unless you build up the put that eye in the correct place. So I'm really thinking about, you know, the corner of the eye. Well, this is more shadow information here, but just thinking about how much of that shadow, you know, does that shadow take up half of our overall shape here, or is it less, or is it more? So this feels pretty good. I think it can maybe come over even more. And then from there are other things that are starting to line up with that. Kind of under eye, skin, like bag of the eye. And then I'll just note, I want to note kind of roughly the roundness of the actual eyeball, and then the iris is kind of the only other decent indicator here within the roundness, because we can't see the roundness on this side. But then we have the pupil. I'm gonna start with that. That feels pretty good to me. I think some of this information, I think we can, you know, the shadow shape up here in the brow needs a little bit more work. So I'm just gonna fill that in with a tone, and I'm gonna try to articulate this a little bit better. So right now, one of the big things that I'm doing is I'm using the same kind of mixture, this wash of just ivory black with Gamsol, but I'm going from what I initially threw in was kind of line language. So I'm blocking this in, and now I'm thinking a little bit more about value, but not multiple values, still just light from dark. But I'm trying to just push that a little bit further. You can come in if you need to and wipe some stuff out, but it's kind of, at this point there's a little bit of line language that's existing with the second pass of kind of value-based decision making. There's a lot going on down here with the lid. And all of that, kind of the under part of the eyeball, and then the lid. But I don't want to get too into the details there, so I'm just gonna step back and look at that, see if there's any big issues, maybe kind of map out a little bit of the topography of the kind of really light side of the brow ridge here. Any other small little indications that are just going to help me later on. But this whole process is kind of finding it and losing it and finding it and losing it. So right now I'm okay with that being my kind of underpainting. You know, within direct painting, all of this is crunched within one tiny bit of time, instead of, like, you know, spending a lot of time on this to the next thing to the next thing. It's the whole accuracy of proportions and everything is building up over the course of the entire painting session. Alright, I don't know if you guys can see me talking to my other camera, but I'm kind of gesturing and trying to talk to this camera. I know that I have this one spotlighted, so yeah, if you don't see me on camera over here, it's because I'm trying to talk to you to this one, but maybe you can't even see that. I don't know. At this point, I'm done with my Gamsol. I've put the lid back on that. I don't like the fumes kind of just bubbling out, so I only have the lid off of that when I absolutely need it. Now it's on, and I'm going to take that same brush. I'm going to come in here grab a little bit of medium, Now I'm going to get thicker paint. So just like in direct painting, what we want to do is find our, if I'm already seeing like some drawing stuff that I want to correct, so I'm going to get some of that off my brush. No, I don't know what I was going for here, but I'm going to do that, and then it kind of drops. Okay, so going for my darkest dark first. This is, if you can see, I'm not sure if you can see that on the camera too well, but this, I'm seeing the white ground kind of coming through this, so that's indicating to me that I have a little bit too much medium. And the medium is nice because this particular canvas is really dry and textured. It's just one of those cardboard like panels that's wrapped in canvas that you buy like a 5-pack of or something. But they really drink the paint in the beginning, so, and they're rough on your brushes, so I put a little extra medium in there to just help it flow. The nice thing, Kamei, you mentioned that you have a toned canvas. The nice thing about that is you actually will be able to judge kind of your lighter values a little bit better. So like for me, the lightest lights are up here, and it's hard to like build up to those because all of this is white, so just kind of killing the whiteness of the canvas is pretty typical practice. Then you can judge both into your darks and into your lights from a mid-tone. So I'm reassessing my original block-in, kind of exterior block-in here, with going around and placing the accurate, just pure black value of our background. This is a little bit more of a nice delicate arc. I start with more of an angle approach. I find that I can get a little bit more accurate with my initial marks by kind of angularizing everything, and then I can kind of soften those arcs later on once I'm more confident in where they're sitting. Here. Yeah, do it. Use a tone canvas. I think that'll be easier to see the values. I typically always have a canvas toned. I tone all my canvases except I tone all my canvases this nice orange. So that wasn't going to be helpful for tonight, so I just went with the white. But yeah, I think starting with a toned canvas, just kind of a neutral middle gray, would be a good place to start. Alright, trying to pick up just that tiny little sliver that you can see the top plane of the eye cast. Alright, so you see how much that paint, so that's a lot of medium. That's okay for now. Again, like I said, I'm kind of battling with this substrate here, so I'm kind of oversaturated the brush. I would be, I'm going to be a lot more careful once I'm in here, but for this, you know, just trying to kill the white canvas and get it to its opposite value of black is just takes a lot of paint right now, so. I don't know if you can see the brush too well, but there's all the paint's kind of sinking into closer to the ferrule. This metal part's the ferrule of the brush. It's all kind of saturating down deep into that area, which is that's a good thing. That's how you know you're loading your brush with enough paint. And with this kind of direct method, you really have to load the brush a lot more. Alright, I'm not totally happy with that, but I think it'll work for now. Get a little bit more. I'm going to get actually going to even get a bigger brush here, just so I can scrub this kind of, so this idea is more scrubbing, you know, it's okay for kind of this, but it actually really eats away at the hairs of your brush, so I'm grabbing just kind of a older brush that I don't mind doing that to. And all I want to do here is just kill as much of this kind of white canvas as I can. It's just distracting. You know, you can even just grab medium and just push it around. So just a quick way of getting a lot of ground covered here. Now I'm going to have to go back in and kind of readdress the true darkest darks, because with this, you know, I can place this paint down and right there it's dark, but the second you start scrubbing it, you're actually just spreading those pigments thinner, so then the kind of tone of the canvas, the white of the canvas will start to come through a little bit more. Not a huge deal at this point. Want it to be less distracting. Alright, that's probably good. So that is all I'm going to use that brush for. I don't think I'll need it. So at this point I've used two brushes, this one and that little scrubby guy. Alright, so from here I have my true dark, and I'm going to come back in here just at this point to place that value. So this whole thought process is the same, whether you're going directly or indirectly. So just placing that black paint down again, and then I want to go straight into the next darkest value, which is going to be all the kind of shadow information in here. I don't see, even in these creases, those might be close, but they don't feel like they're quite as dark as the background. So I'm kind of noting that before I get into it. I'm just going to use the same brush. Take a little bit of white here. I'm going to just plop it down, and then I make this comparison. Now what I'm seeing is that that's not even close to light enough. That jump from this value to that value is too close compared to my reference. So go a little bit lighter. That feels pretty close. I'm going to go just a little bit lighter on that. Now with this, I'm just doing the same thing. I'm just going to paint in this whole shadow shape. And within this second pass, you know, this is my second time analyzing this area of the brow. You know, the first time was this rough kind of block in. So the second time I'm going to go a little bit slower and just check myself, see if what I was doing was right or if there were any parts that were off. Alright, coming down here. If anyone has questions, yeah, just feel free to ask away. I'll try to do my best to answer them as we go. Squinting down my reference, you can't see it. I don't really want to adjust the cameras right now, but it's not that big. I actually like to start with my reference image. You know, you guys have all seen my big old TV that I put my reference on, but the image is still rather small in the beginning because I don't want to get caught up in the details too soon. I'll blow that image up later, zoom into it if I need to, once I'm at a stage where I can get into those details. Yeah, you could. Yes, absolutely, if you want to. The way I approach my underpaintings very kind of additively instead of subtractively. So either way, kind of whichever of those underpainting languages worked for you, that's fine. But yeah, you kind of just go straight into it after you do that wipeout, or in this case, wash in type thing. Kind of, no, you'll see strings. This whole thing will become a string. I'm just kind of starting here. I'm still working within that same, you know, there's a ton of variation within these values, but for now, I'm still just kind of blocking in those big values. So this whole gray pool is essentially, I'm treating it as the same value. And then I'll come out of, I'll add a little bit lighter value here. So this will become a color or a value string. Hey, Colleen. Oh, really? Yeah. Uh-huh. No, not for me. Yeah. Yeah, are you sitting at the easel or standing? Sure. Yeah. I guess I feel like, yeah, it's not an issue for me. I'm not sure why. That might just be person to person, but my whole kind of act is it's I'm using my wrist pretty well, but I'm also painting with the whole shoulder. So if I was only using my wrist for everything, I could see, getting this whole setup getting a little irritating after a while. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have any complaints with it so far. Mhm. Yeah. Ah, yeah. And right. That's interesting. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah, this whole thing has been, at least as far as my training goes, the like only kind of big, I guess, injury avoidance thing that I was taught is just painting with your shoulder and your elbow, because those painters that are just using their little digits is how you're going to get the carpal tunnel and some more like ligament type injuries within your hand for in the long run. So, but yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe my shoulder will give out in a couple years. I don't know. Mhm. Sure. Yeah, yeah. Actually, there is. Now that I'm thinking about it, there is like one thing that I've noticed is starting to happen more and more. It's like there's a nerve kind of from the back of your head that kind of runs down into your arm, and that so like my drawing shoulder arm does get tight and tense a lot more frequently, and I had to look up some like arm stretches. You just kind of put your arm against the wall and then you turn this way, and it's like so much different from my like drawing arm to my not drawing arm, I guess. Um, but yeah, it's funny how we have to like stretch to do our seemingly inactive activities, but yeah, all these micro motions that you do over and over, the super repetitive stuff is the stuff that sneaks up on you. Okay, so I switched into the next kind of value range here, and we're in the lights, but we're working in the kind of dark halftones of the lights, and I'm again my best area to make these comparisons is typically right next to something else. So like some of my first attempts at this value are right here, against this shadow here, to see if that feels like the excuse me, right amount of value jump, and then I can compare it here too. Squinting down, that feels okay to me. I'm gonna lighten this up later, but I'm kind of averaging out this darker halftone region. Kind of runs this whole section. And then there's, yeah, same brush right now. So what you'll see is this brush is going to kind of travel its way into the lights as much as possible. I can't use it for the super light lights. I'll get a clean one for that. But this brush currently is going from here to here to here, and it'll keep going into the lights until, again, all the pigment in the brush is kind of working against me to darken my values too much. But then you can see, so right now I kind of placed this, but I'm looking back at here, and there's still this little value. There's this darker tone here that I didn't clump into my shadow shapes, because it's not quite as dark as that, but it's darker than this. So I can actually come back to my color strings, and this is the great thing about your color strings, is you can see the logic here. And I said I jumped from this value to this value, but I need something in between the two, so I can actually come in and have, again, just like up here, this side-by-side comparison. I can make this side-by-side comparison here to get that darker tone that's lighter than this but darker than this. And that is in place. Here. So you can think of kind of this the beginning of what I'm doing here as almost like what we were doing very early on with the value studies of the master copies, those paintings we were doing value master copies of. It's a similar, very much tile. I'm just placing tiles right now, but once these tiles are placed, then we just start working on top of it. So I should actually kind of try to speed up here a little bit so we can start to articulate these decisions further. But still currently just thinking about darker halftones. Anywhere I'm seeing and I am semi-confident in how my eye is trained in terms of getting the proportions pretty quickly, but I'm not set on any of them. I know that once I get enough context in, I'm going to be pushing and manipulating, you know, where the corner of the eyes are. All this stuff is movable, but I'm trying to be patient with it right now and just get all these values down, because I won't really be able to tell until I have enough context in. These little halftones that are shooting in and out. They're like cool little texture that is just in the sculpted interpretation of the eyebrow here. I'm just going for the big idea of this. We can again fine-tune this later. But so these, remember how we were talking about seeing these halftones, these dark halftones coming straight out of the shadow? They're the hardest ones to really find, but they're really important for this. Now here, kind of as the brow curls up this way, these halftones kind of bleed out a little bit further. Now there's reflected light that's happening in there, but I don't I'm not going to quite get into that yet. I want it to be as kind of simple of an idea as possible for myself, so that future me, when I come back around to this, that won't be confusing, because right now I'm saying these values are representing halftones, meaning in the light family, but everything in here, this reflected light, those are shadow family values, even if they might be pretty close to these halftones. I'm just kind of leaving them out for now. Corner of the eye. I'm not sure. There's just a little shadow under the lid there, and I've hesitated making any decisions in here because these are some pretty big jumps within small kind of delicate values here, plus kind of just the structure of the eyeball is really important, so I'm not I'm kind of standoffish about getting into that until I have, until I can make more of this like marching decision. So once I get kind of this part of the eye in, then I can find the top lid of the eye and etc. But I'm going to just kind of take a stab at where I think this is. Alright, I'm going to go into the next value up here. A little more medium. I want to, currently I'm working, in my opinion, pretty thinly, like I don't have globs of paint anywhere, and I need to kind of replenish the body of this paint in general, so I'm grabbing both of these pigments to just kind of have a nice pool of this I can grab from. And as I'm working into the lights, I'm going to start, again, just personal preference, start to work a little bit more thick with my paint. So I'm going to work into those next values. Maybe. That's kind of hard too. Oh, for a minute? Yeah, totally. We can do that. Yeah. Yeah. Like I can't get much closer for the whole thing, or I'm going to be in the way. But yeah, let's take a sec. All right. We shall continue. Yeah, I do. Even when I had, part of it is just having a wall-mounted easel. It's just kind of built into the workflow for that. But I've always liked it more upright than not. I don't know why. Just because the only thing I can warn you about having it too, the important thing is that you want it to be perpendicular to your like eye level, right? So that makes sense. So if you're kind of sitting and you're kind of looking down at it, then I would have it at more of an angle like this if I was kind of doing this. But since I'm standing up and I'm looking straight across at it, I want it to kind of match a perpendicular angle to my kind of eye line, I guess. Alright, so I'm going to come in here and attempt this next little value range. This will be a good spot to test because I have it right next to the black. This seems pretty good. Making this comparison to double check you know, oftentimes you can, with this approach, it's a little cookie cutter, you know, like I'm mixing this value and I'm saying that this value is exactly the same as this. So I'm always trying to double check to see if there's any subtle kind of alterations I need to make, but I'm also keeping it open enough because I know once I place all this paint, then I have that big picture context and then I can make more fine-tune adjustments. So it's actually pretty similar to indirect painting, but it just happens all at once. You know, I do my underpainting, then I come in and I do my first pass, and then I do my second pass, and it's all within one sitting. Yeah, sure, totally, yeah. Still trying to keep the big stuff, the big shapes as my priority. Alright, now I'm noting that I didn't kind of find that dark halftone coming out of the shadow on the lid there. So I'm just kind of pinching all the pigment off my brush, and I'm just going to try to get that back exactly. I'm here somewhere. So no, only because I ran out of it. So I just have a linseed oil Gamsol mix in this little pot here. But yeah, either of those is fine. I'll just add that little piece in, and I'm seeing it kind of around here too. So that's kind of blown out the actual shadow information there, but that's alright, we can get to that in a little bit. So looking around at this value, do I need it anywhere else? There's a couple other spots. I'm seeing it down here. Again, I'm not totally sold on where I'm placing kind of the bag of the eye, under the skin under the eye here. Not totally sold on that, but I'm going to place it anyway. Alright, now you can tell, because I kind of pinched all the pigment off my brush, you can see how dry this is. I don't like working with my brush that dry ever, so I'm going to like replenish this whole thing. But I'm also going to go lighter in value, so taking it one step up, or maybe a couple steps up, we'll see. So I just want to get this overall kind of lightness of what's going on here. So I'm going to place this, and I'm going to have a look at it. The other thing that I'm noticing is this is when this brush will not help me anymore. This brush is too far into the light value. But I want to go in here and re-establish that dark. The other thing you can see with my black pile of paint there is it's kind of already been tainted by some of this white pigment. So I'm going to get a little fresh black paint over here to the side. I'm making sure that I get a true darkest dark. I'm not super worried about them yet. I'll get into the edges in a little bit, but yeah, right now I want them to be pretty, you know, I really am just treating this very similar to how we treated those master copies, is just trying to have really tight, crisp edges. I'm making a little bit of drawing edits here, but it's kind of a two-way street, so part of this this value I want to push into the black. I thought that kind of arc was a little bit too sudden pull that a little bit. So having both of these brushes going at the same time. And what I'm seeing is that's pretty close. I'm going to make it a little bit lighter. Yeah, that's better. It's probably not even that noticeable in the camera. But now there's some drawing issues on this side. So yeah, you can see that I'm kind of pulling that paint around. We can, I try to address direct painting. To me, it seems like you address the problems as they come up a little bit more, like immediately, than with indirect painting. You know, you can it's like you have this mentality of like, oh, I'll fix that with my second pass. But this is a little bit more. Let me try to fix that now. All right, that's better. So with this main value that I got going here, I'm just going to fill in this whole bottom area. I know there's a lot of subtlety in that, but again, that's going to happen with on top of this once I have all this context in. You do and you can. I think I'm probably where I want to take a break is probably once I get it all covered and kind of look at it and rest my eyes a little bit. But yeah, I feel like you kind of just have to learn your own flow. For me, I feel like I'm kind of in the zone and I have a little bit of momentum here just with the logic that I've placed and my thought process with this, that I kind of want to just keep rolling through it, get at least this main area covered, and then I'll step back and take a minute. Yeah, totally. And I'm trying to step back, you know, I don't know if you can, where I am right now on this camera is, I'm like 5 or 6 feet away. The other thing I do, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I tilt my head off to the side a lot, both directions, for whatever reason. I feel like I've just watched some videos, videos of myself doing this, and I didn't realize I did it that often, but it really helps me kind of analyze the shapes and step back and just see it. So when I'm stepping back, I'm more of analyzing what I'm doing or what I just did, and not so much like, I don't know, I'm looking at it as a viewer and not as a painter for a quick second. Alright, so this area is confusing for me, so I'm going to leave it alone. I'm not going to solve it right now. I'm going to come back over here. I want to place that. So this value's not quite right. It's a little bit too light. Black brush here. Okay, this whole area kind of skipped right in between. that. This value is a little bit lighter. Right in here. Alright, so this whole area I am going to try to sort out now. I'm going to start some of the lighter parts. And again, I'm just thinking of getting this in the ballpark. Now I have to go back in my value range a little bit. Some of these tones on the far side a little darker. Okay, now finding where the two eyelids, the upper and the lower, are meeting. I'm going to try to be very careful with that. Now I'm just taking a quick attempt at trying to get the light on the eyelid here. I don't think it's quite right. But again, I'm going to come back to this. I need more context for that. So let's fill in the eye. Darker down here. It gets a little bit lighter up here, just like a sphere. Okay, and then the far side of the eye is a little bit darker too. Alright, and you know what? I'm going to paint out that pupil spot. It wasn't quite in the right spot, and it wasn't helping me at all, so it's gone. Alright, now I want to do the same thing up here. I want to try to speed this up so at this point I am starting to notice a little bit of impatience, and my eyes and my brain, everything's just getting a little tired, so I do want to try to get this first pass covered, so that when I come back to it, I can start to make, keep the momentum up and make the nice, fun, bigger decision or smaller decisions and edits to these things. But I'm going to try to just speed up a little bit. Way back up into my light range. Put that piece. Alright, now I'm looking at my absolute lightest lights. The top part of this lid is pretty light, but it's not as light as these kind of top planes. And then we have just a little sliver of the actual top plane of this the cube of the eye cast itself. So I'm going to get, I think how I'm going to set this up is I'm going to get pretty light here with this brush that has darker pigment in it. I'm going to use that right along here. I need a little bit of medium to help it flow out of the bristles. So to me that's saying I know that this is not pure white, so I'm going to get a new brush, similar kind of size range. That might be too big actually. Alright, so this brush is a little bit smaller. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to try to grab from this white pool where it hasn't been touched, white paint, and swap that in. Now this is good because it's telling me that I have this range here to get a little bit more subtle. I'm going to attempt to do this with the kind of this, my original brush that has all this pigment on it. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to try to bridge this gap a little bit. Fill this in. Now the more I, lick the canvas with whatever's under it, the more I'm kind of changing that value. And with these kind of darker pigments and me trying to work in this really light, subtle range, I don't really want to lick the canvas too much. I want to try to control my values over here. Okay, now I know that I've missed all these halftones. I placed the dark halftones, but I haven't really gone back in and found the lighter halftones and all that change. I'm just going to add this value here as, again, just this bridge. It's just bridging from there to there. And I'm going to look over at my cast. I'm going to squint down. It looks pretty close. I'm happy with where it is right now, and there's nothing glaring with its values. The pupil is now a pretty important part of the overall, even me squinting down, so I want to place that back in. So let's see where it lands. Alright, now on the other side of that, I'm going to come back up here. So I kind of messed that up. This is definitely, I'm not the cleanest color string, value string painter. I try to use it where I can, but I definitely mess things up from time to time here. I'm going to come in and try to place some of the other part of that plane that's catching the light as the light's coming down. It's catching that lip. Okay. Yeah, so it's definitely break time. Alright, I'm back. We'll get into this. So I realized that the camera that I'm filming it on. Forgot to turn the microphone on. So there's no volume on that, I think. Very little. But here's kind of the zoom up of this. You can see edge, quality here, a couple spots where I haven't filled in yet. And then I spent about 5 minutes just looking at this and comparing it to the reference that I have. One thing you can do I don't think I've mentioned it, but has Tiffany talked to you about Black Mirrors? Not the TV show.
Not that I remember.
So I'm gonna just use this. Well, no. So a black mirror you can use to help see values, but we have pretty much all of our cell phones are black mirrors if you keep the screen off, and I always just kind of hold mine up like this, and then I try to get the reference image and the painting in the same, so they're both on the screen, so I can make this comparison. So it flips the thing upside down, makes the values for whatever reason easier to see. It kind of when you're working from life, it keeps the lights from being blown out. It kind of just not softens, but it makes all the value changes more obvious, I guess. I kind of think of it like polarized lenses, how they take the glare off of shiny things. Black mirrors do a similar thing for whatever you're looking at. So that's something that I would do at this stage to just make sure my values are in the right range, but I have my phone as a camera right now, so I'm not going to do that. But I'm just going to jump back into it with this kind of second pass thing. And I'm going to soften my edges now. I need to fill in one little piece, and then I'm going to soften edges. The only edges I really need to worry about softening are the kind of bounding box of this thing, because all the edges in here I'm going to keep working. But first, let's just get that lightest light back on.
Jesse, did you have your hand up?
Oh.
I did. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I should have said something. I don't. Yeah. I was just wondering if you're so nice. Thank you. If you're working from like a color, or you're doing like a color painting, and you're working like from a photograph, do you ever turn your photograph into black and white, or do you feel like that's cheating?
You can. I would.
Like get the
try to.
The underpainting.
Totally. I would try to. What you want to do is train your eye to see that in color, see all the values, and just make that translation in your head. But I'll switch things to black and white if I'm checking my values or anything like that. So I usually do it after the fact to just see if I'm on the right track or not. But yeah, totally. Not cheating. Nothing's cheating. Everything is just a tool to get the job done. Alright, so I'm just filling in this little section. This is too light. Get this brush here to finish this off.
Is anyone else seeing like track?
Yeah, it's like this.
It's like a TV from 1975.
Oh,
the
fun.
image is kind of fried looking.
What happened? I gotta just take a screenshot of this because it's so cool looking. And then I'll try to fix it. Oh.
I lost my connection for about 10 minutes because I lost battery, and then I had to run around and try to get cords and so on, but what is that? It's like a thing, that little attachment. Does it steady your hand?
Yeah, it's just a mall stick.
A mall stick. Okay.
Yeah.
How do you have it secured? Is it like
I have it
something, or it's just loose?
It's just hanging from a hook on this dowel up top. You see that?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So then,
Oh, okay.
and then the other nice thing is it leans against the shelf here, so you can just, you don't really have to stabilize it or anything. It kind of just does it by itself.
It's better than getting, yeah, your fingers on your paint. Okay.
Yeah. Let me know if any weird glitches happen again. I guess they might. My phone might not be able to handle all this. But we'll see. All right, so I got my brushes. I got my light. What's kind of the everything in between, and then my black. That's kind of where I'm at with brushes right now. And I've placed what I want to place for the most part. I'm gonna grab this everything in between brush and just gonna finish off. At this point, I'm just trying to cover up any spots on the canvas that I want to. Down there, I'm gonna sort out, but got those. Now I'm gonna grab this brush here. It's just a soft, this is a sable brush, but it's kind of like soft and moppy. And this is what I'm gonna use. I'm just gonna seam these edges, so I call it seaming edges, but it's you know, you're just softening edges where you need to, but I want this all the way around to kind of soften. Now while I'm softening these edges, I'm still thinking about my drawing here. So if there's anywhere that I need to pull the dark a little bit further in, then I will, and then I'll give it a couple swipes, and then I try to, what you're probably not seeing on camera is I'm just wiping it on my apron to kind of get as much pigment off as I can. But again, I'm not trying to be, I want to be as precise as I can, but I don't want to be overly obsessively precise with anything, because it's all just wet paint and I can fix it later on. I'm just trying to get it a little bit closer. So I'm avoiding doing any of the wiping in the white and the black, because that's going to put the most kind of contrast on my brush. So I'm kind of keeping it in these gray areas to start with. That's just kind of how I have landed on managing my brushes, so that I can use them for as long as possible before I have to get a clean one. So nothing too crazy here, just softening these edges a little bit and adjusting if I need to along the way. So you see my brush work there, kind of all of this, I'll address that later. And then the edges, I tend to keep my edges in the lights a little bit harder. You know, this contrast is enough, it's pulling the eye straight to this spot. So the hard edge is going to only reinforce that kind of, I guess, directing of the eye. But I do want to get rid of any of the little holidays that I have. Alright, and then this edge feels a little hard to me. to adjust that contour slightly. We can come back in there and cover that up with the appropriate paints. One thing, just like a little hack for, like, you know, this is the shiniest or the lightest spot. It is in a high impact place. You can kind of make it feel like it's glowing if you want by just, you soften the edge and you kind of just carry the, it's almost like just a soft edge glow. Just make that shine, makes it shine. It's not really shining right now, but trust me, it works sometimes. Alright, so now when I'm going to go into my second pass here, that looks good to me. Put down the blending brush. I'm going to start at this same spot that I started my first pass on. So it's kind of just this whole process again, but now that I have all this context in, I can make it, I can make more smaller kind of changes that I need to, and they will all be, you know, this second pass is going to go a little slower because I can start to see all the little details that I need now. Alright, I'm going to get rid of this glow. It's a fun attempt, but don't need it. Adjusting the drawing a little bit. Now I'm going to go into, so the black brush, I will, if I need that again, pure black, I'll have to get it with a clean brush, because now I'm going to go into these tones here. And what I want to do first is hit, so I have kind of the shadow family figured out, but I know that I can push my Terminator edge here. So I don't know how much, just let me know if this mall stick is too intrusive and I can move it out of the way. I'm going to go, just trying to find this Terminator edge, starting in the same spot. I'm going to get a new brush, get some black paint. I have to work this edge simultaneously. Alright, so now I got 4 brushes in hand. This value is just a little, I'm trying to calibrate it again here so it's a little dark. There, it's better. So you can see by me heightening or darkening the value of this core shadow line, I'm in a way kind of pulling out or showing off the reflected light here. So instead of lightening that value, I can just slightly darken our reflected or our core shadow value. I have to gotta stand back as much as possible. If you ever, I am doing the wrong thing here because I have a white t-shirt on, and your actual shirt will catch the light and reflect into everything. Right now I'm having an issue because the white of my t-shirt is making a glare on the screen, so I'm kind of trying to step back and see these values more accurately. That's what I'm battling with right now. Move that over a little bit. All right, finding the dark down in here again. I'm going to go even a little bit darker this spot right in the kind of deep in the eye socket. It's pretty dark.
Could you please show us a close up?
Yeah, sure. So all the kind of those darker marks are the ones I'm making currently with the brush that I have. I don't know, is that very clear? It seems like it's...
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Uh-oh. Wish I could zoom. Oh! Boy, look at that, I can zoom. Shoot, alright, well there we go. Zoom in a little bit. Okay, yep, keep going. And that section. Now there's here is pretty dark. Until about here. Nope, until about here. Alright, got those, even this whole, the whole kind of cast shadow of the brow onto the eyelid here is a similar value. So I'll throw that in. Oops, too dark. And then that same value you can see down here. Now I have a little bit of a drawing issue because I'm catching, this brow, and then there's more space between here and the eyeball. There's more eyelid, so I'm just gonna correct for that now. I'm gonna use this brush to try to do that. So making some adjustments. Now I'm gonna pull out the eyelid is then catching or casting a very similarly toned shadow, same value over the eyeball. Rough it in first, make sure those values feel okay. Make sure when you have any sort of drawing issue like that, the easy fix is to just correct that, but what if I had to bring this up? So I'm just going back, kind of snapping back to a big picture approach here to see if that was the right call. So now that I have all this paint down, especially going from a super light value to this darker value, you're fighting with the pigment that's already down there. So I'm constantly coming back to my palette to remix. Realized, can you guys hear me okay? I just realized it didn't connect to my headphones.
Yes.
Okay. Weird. Maybe they died. I'm gonna take my headphones off then. I don't need them. Okay. So right in there, that feels okay. I'm gonna round out this eye now.
even though it's physically tiring, it's less stressful compared to indirect painting.
It's true, yeah. I've parts of indirect painting I've always kind of clashed against. I don't like not knowing like what the next, I don't like the idea of, so I guess let me back up and say that my typical painting approach is more direct. It's just a bunch of direct painting layers on top of each other, because I don't really like the idea of trying to set myself up for the next painting session. I want to try to get it as accurately as possible in the first session, and then only if I can't get it do I have to go back into it. So yeah, I agree with you. I think it is less stressful. You can kind of just see where the painting's going and know where it's going and know how to help get it there.
Yeah, because usually in the indirect painting that we were doing with the torso and mouth, I was lost in the first half an hour of, the next session that I wanted to work on it.
Uh-huh. Yeah, trying to figure out like where to pick back up, where to start.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that can happen. Just know that, I think one of the like big kind of takeaways I had when I learned about indirect painting is that these people, the masters, all the greats, they don't do it in one sitting. They do it. It takes a lot of times and a lot of passes and refinement to get it there. However that looks. When I came into the atelier method, and when I first went to Georgetown, I didn't know how it was done. It seemed to me like the only way you can do it with oil paints is like this, alla prima, just one and done. But that's not the case. There is a working method for this, and it's not even realistic to think that these incredible paintings were done that quickly and with just super precise execution. That's not true. So yeah, whether you fall into more of a direct approach or not, it's kind of like a spectrum, direct painting and indirect painting. You can pick and choose from both things and get a good painting out of it. So all right, I want the eye, everything's feeling pretty good to me. I like what's going on there, the shadows in there. Now the eyeball is still glaringly needs work, so I'm gonna just jump into that section next. You find yourself, if you do this direct painting of this eye cast, just just try to monitor yourself. This is where you naturally want to just start working that area. If you work it too long, just try to jump around. Try to work this a little bit and then jump over here and then jump. Try to constantly be working in an area where you have more of a fresh eyes on it. Those darkest darks now within this pupil here. It's a lot of different values happening. It's because of how small that concave space is. Light is bouncing around a lot. This. So I want to get the light side of the eyeball here. Lighter still. Actually, no. I won't go there. So that was, I just caught myself, I was about to push the lights in here because I see a value difference from up here to down here and even off to the side, and to try to get that I want to go lighter, but then I'm thinking I need to you can go lighter and let me back up here. I was going to push this too light, so within the context of this tiny space it would have looked lighter, but then the lights here, you know, zooming out to looking at my reference, the lights here aren't much lighter than some of these, you know, they're not as light as out here, they're just barely as light as some of these other tones in this local area, so they should be okay where they're at. I think, you know, there's going to be a few little highlights on this side, but not on the actual ball, the concave space of the eye, or convex, I mean. Just trying to note that little lip there. That's all I really want to do. Now I'll come back down into these darker grays. Still pretty light in comparison. So getting a little panicky here, so I'm going to just walk away from it. I'm going to work a different section. Finish this out. So I'm noticing the this little area from the eyeball to the eyelid here, if you squint down on that, they're the same values, so that's kind of a nice area. We call it a passage, so there's passage between these two forms. I like, those are nice because it's kind of a no-brainer. If you have your values in the right space, you don't have to, you can just match that and pull it along. The other thing is, you know, you don't want to give all the details away. It's nice to have some spots where kind of find and lose edges. All right, now I'm gonna lighten this value up a little bit, and I'm gonna push the this lower eyelid needs to get a little bit wider at the bottom. So just gotta get the right value. Lower eyelid is pretty bright. All right, and there's this little trail of lightness that's coming up in here. Try to get that. Now, where else do we have some of those light values? Right in there, and then kind of down along that. Oh wait, since I have this, let's come up here and look at this area. Let's look at this area. Now this, I still have a lot of edge work that I want to resolve, but for now, that's okay. Now I'm going to drop this value again. It's a little bit more subtlety within this fold, or I don't know what this is, this little skin part. Let's check this shadow. Let's clean up this eyelid. Almost wish I had another kind of in-between brush, but I'm just going to go with what I got. I can always grab one if I really needed it. How's everyone doing? Need another Zoom up soon?
Yes, please.
Doing okay. I know my eyes get tired though, looking at screens. After a certain point, it's just like, oh, I can't do it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, let's
It really hasn't been a problem until this whole COVID thing, and then there's everything's on.
You right? Yeah.
Eyes get tired. I can wear these blue screen filter glasses if I remember to. It's supposed to help.
Yeah. Those seem cool. I'm never in front of a screen too long, I guess, but yeah, I know some people that have those and they say they are helpful.
Yeah.
That's all right, let me just hit one more spot and then I'll do a zoom up. Alright, we'll do a zoom up and then let's take 5 minutes. Oh gosh, it's 8:30. Alright. So I guess this is gonna last all night, I think.
I can take back my critique request, it's not a problem to wait till Thursday.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let's just try to push this a little further. It's not where I want it to be. But I will say, if you have anything like timed or you have any time constraints with stuff like this, this is the point where I am starting to think about prioritizing certain sections in case, if I'm not going to finish everything and polish everything, I'm going to prioritize sections like the eye and probably up here. This area, I'm kind of asking myself, do I like the more blocky language, the brush strokes? As long as the values are close, I might leave some of that. So, I'm seeing I need to make some edits to the eyelid a little bit, and I want to kind of finish this section off and that section off and this section. But down here, I'm not gonna. That's gonna be my last priority. It's really subtle, and it isn't as crucial, I guess, within the structure of getting this to a good spot. So yeah, let's take 5 minutes. Rest your eyes from the screen. I'm gonna just kind of look at this thing and come up with my next moves, and then I'll jump back into it. I am here though, so if you have any questions, you can ask. I'm just sitting off camera looking at it and looking at my reference. Okay, I said 5 minutes, but I see things and I'm just going to start painting. But please take 5 minutes if you're getting tired of staring at the screen. I'll be here working. Let's see. Okay, I don't know if anyone's back with me, but I'm kind of working this eyelid round volume here. And I'm just placing the lightest light down first, kind of reestablishing that, and then I'm seeing, you know, the same kind of thing that I've been talking to you guys about in the critiques that I have with you, is just looking at how soft the edge, the transitions are. They're way too hard for me, like especially something super round like this. These transitions need to be slow and soft. With Alla Prima, if you kind of have calibrated your I don't know, your hand, your eye to the painting, and you have these brushes that you're familiar with what's in them, you can kind of soften just with a tactile kind of variation. So just kind of working lighter and lighter, same brush, you know, and then you can get some of these soft, super soft transitions without having to kind of mix every single transition that you see. That just takes some getting used to, and once you're working wet into wet, you'll probably click into it pretty quick. But yeah, that's all I'm doing here, is I'm just using what's on my brush to help soften these edges.
So Riley, when you paint outside, do you paint for as long as you can and like take a photograph and finish it, or you do everything, do a direct painting outside?
When I'm doing plein air, it's usually all from life outdoors. Those, it's kind of a little bit of a different approach, or just different mindset, because the light outdoors, you only have about 2 hours tops with the same lighting. So I've gotten to the point where I can do a painting in an hour or 2 hours, you know. They're not as finished by any means. They're typically look more like a first pass of what I'm doing tonight, you know, very blocky, big shapes. But the other nice thing about painting outdoors is this is something that your eye can tell is right or wrong, you know, the structure is there. But outdoors, you paint a tree and it doesn't have to look like the exact tree you're looking at. It just has to look like a tree. So it's a little bit faster. You know, everything I'm doing within the second pass is making sure that the structure stays intact as the painting develops. So yeah, when I'm outdoors, you don't need that quite as much. Drop way back down in these darker values. This needs to shift down more. So let's mess with the over here. I haven't really revisited this section in a while. Values are going to get lighter. Oh.
Pupil has lots of midtones. I think just working on that takes me 1 hour.
Yeah, it's true. Again, there's a certain level with direct painting where you have to step back from the piece, look at it from 10 feet or so, or more if you can, and just ask yourself if the illusion comes across at that distance, and then walk up to it, and if it still holds its own, then you kind of have to like have a conversation with the painting and with yourself as to where you want the detail and if it's worth it. You know, if the illusion works from a distance, for me that's the like first victory, and then I just push and pull the detail a little bit as much as I need. I tend to like finishing work, especially direct painting work, a little bit more brushy and loose. So yeah, and then I guess the other just word of caution with that is even if you see all those details in there, don't just jump right into that. Bring up the whole painting, progress the whole painting equally, so that, you know, if you're starting to round this, you have to make sure everything else is at a stage that you can also be rounding all those with the same level of detail. It's just, I think about that a lot to keep you from kind of getting tunnel vision on a certain spot. Darker. I'm going to go a lot darker. Alright, so this is a spot where I want to pull back, get my kind of core shadow value back for a few little notes in here. So somehow I lost my pure black paint once again. It always happens. It might not be super obvious through the lens, but or through the camera, but I'm trying to, the eyelid has a little bit of reflected light, so that the shadow it casts is darker than the shadow part of the lid itself. So I'm just trying to make that distinction. And then as that shadow casts along the edge of the eye, it kind of curves down, right, because it's on this spherical form. Pretty dark right in there in the corner. The tear duct. Alright, coming back up here now. I want to at least just soften these edges. This is going to be one of those areas that isn't going to be that I focus too much on. All my focus is going to be here and here and around this, but out here I just want to kind of note the value shifts. So it's a little bit lighter, and really, you know, I'm thinking about the planes, so the top part of the eyebrow is a little bit catching a little bit more light even as it's going away from the light source. And the brow ridge, the actual kind of muscles and bony forms under the eyebrow in this brow ridge area are kind of bulking up. Lighter still. That's pretty light up there. This little spot, really catching a little bit of light too. Alright, so this is jumping out at me. This little section is, that can use a little refining. You know, it's nice because I have all the screens. I'm watching the screen share too, so it's like some spots really jump out, especially when they're on a screen for whatever reason. I would urge you guys to take photos every now and then, and you'll see these things clearer. So I'm gonna just address some of those spots, like this one for sure. Those dark notes kind of come out a little bit more. That. Softening that back a little, and I'm going to try to do the same up here, though this is still a pretty dark little shadow shape. But it could use a little refining in its edge quality. Now there's a couple little notes of the eyebrow as it's coming across. Alright, now I'm going to get this lighter brush and indicate how some of the what am I trying to say? Eyebrow is coming out that way. So starting to split and find the subforms within all of this. Going back to my dark brush. Now see, these transitions are too abrupt, so I'm going to look into that. So for me, or in my opinion, the way to create illusion is from here to here, right? I've talked about that a little bit. So if you need to prioritize a space, it's just, you know, if you have a time constraint or whatever, you know, you're doing like a figure session and you want to turn the form on something, it's keep the lights flat and the shadows flat and just really fine-tune the transition from your core shadow line out into the lights. You know, your dark halftones and your light halftones, and then you can walk away with at least a decent kind of illusion of form. Even if it's a little stylized, it's clear that there's like three-dimensionality to it. Alright, so this area is still popping out at me. I don't like that. That is, I just talked about that. I want to Make sure I get those half tones coming out. Bridge value on top. All right, I'm gonna step back for a minute. Oh boy, I hope I'm not putting you guys to sleep. I won't take offense if everyone's asleep though. All right, even just looking in my screen, you know, they're cool. I kind of like the edges, but I have enough time to just come in here and soften those. And I'm just using what's on my brush. It's in this value range, and I'm just kind of lightly going, kind of bridging that with the brush itself. So we're getting close. This value is a little bit too dark for there. Come up here. I'll just kind of try to get some of that sense of the hair that's happening. Alright, now I'm going to get my pure white brush again, grab this, and I want to hit a couple spots. So spending time with this reference, I'm finding that I'm kind of fine-tuning the true lightest lights. I'm seeing them in here. I'm using thicker paint. And then this edge here. And that's always hard because typically these casts are lit from something like this, so this whole area is light, but like an edge or something where there's a big plane change that's more perpendicular to where a light source is going to still be lighter still. So this is when I use the actual thickness of the paint to help me kind of get that next level of brightness. I don't know if you can really see it there. So the downside of this is the thick paint also casts a shadow like you see in here. So I don't want it to really stand off that much. But something like that, and then I might take this paint, just drop it a little bit and look for maybe a couple little spots where I can push into the lights down here. Still not as light, but pretty light. There. And there. And then there's this kind of little edge. There's light on this edge, which is fun. I'm going to go for that too. And I think I'm going to be at a place that I'm okay with calling it for now. Wrap up with any kind of Q&A. Alright, zoom up to this one more time. Yeah, you know, there's stuff in here, so looking at it on the screen, it's nice because I can tell a few things. But like for instance, I think it can go a little bit darker here, maybe I'll try to do that real fast because that's a kind of an important area. I guess the other thing I'm noticing is I can bring this, the pupil is a little pinched. Can come down. Oh no. Okay, I'm gonna zoom in on this now.
Can you hold it for a while, like for a second, for when you zoom in?
Yeah, totally. I will, remember.
Riley, is there a reason that you didn't soften the shadow? I don't know how.
This one?
Over, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
The reason is I am just seeing it now. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Stuff will just jump out at you. Sometimes glaringly obvious little things. I'm gonna remove this and come back to where am I? Yeah, sometimes it just takes, you know, more time. I think the nice thing, well, the gift and the curse of direct painting like this is once you're in it to the level that I'm kind of at right now, I probably want to keep painting for another 2 hours or something to get it to a place where I'm really happy with, you know? And the only reason I'd extend a painting session that long is just to, because it's all wet, it's a lot easier to manage and deal with, and I have all my brushes and the palette, everything is set up for that painting. So it's worth just kind of crunching and keep going. I typically don't paint for more than like 3 or 4 hours in a session. But like if I have the whole day in the studio, then I will paint for 3 or 4 hours, then I'll have lunch and kind of really rest my eyes, and then I can come back to it and everything's still wet and good to go. So that's a nice thing about direct painting, but yeah, what you just saw is kind of the hold up on it is you're so in the zone that you kind of miss big things every now and then. So, you know, I'd probably take a 5-minute break or something and come back into that if I wanted to, but yeah, good question. That spot, I didn't even look at it since the first pass pretty much. Yeah, any other questions? I know I took up the whole session there, but
No, I think that was helpful.
Okay.
Oh.
Cool. Yeah, well, I'll take a photo of this and put it in the supply materials, I guess. Somewhere in there, in the Dropbox. Probably in supplied materials, just with everything else. So you have it as reference. And yeah, I guess that's it. I'll just try to get through crits with everyone on Thursday, whether that's, you know, your final pass on the indirect stuff or this or, you know, whatever I can. I'm probably going to prioritize just like one of those two things per person, since I'm trying to get everyone in before the end of class. But if we have extra time, then I'm happy to look at the other one, whichever one you get it. I've been talking all night. I don't know my words. But yeah, thanks guys for watching and letting me paint all night. It's a real treat.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Riley.
Yeah. Yeah, unless there's anything else, let's call it. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Bye guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Night. Night.